The Vorathian War Tribunal chamber hummed with the sound of anti-gravity generators as Commander Zelthus observed the human prisoner through 6 crystalline eyes. Mira Castellan sat motionless in the restraint field, her coveralls still stained with coolant fluid from the engine bay where she had been captured 3 cycles ago. She looked unremarkable, fragile even, with her soft flesh and single pair of eyes. Zelthus clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. The human would confess to sabotaging the fleet's primary communications relay, and then she would be executed as an example to the other Deathworlder slaves. "You understand why you are here," Zelthus began, his translator rendering his chittering speech into flat human standard. "Your species was warned. Comply with the labor assignments or face immediate termination. Yet you chose destruction." Mira raised her head slowly, and Zelthus noticed something unsettling in her expression. Not fear. Not even resignation. Something that looked almost like amusement. "You think I sabotaged your relay?" she asked. Her voice carried a strange lightness that made Zelthus's sensory tendrils twitch with uncertainty. "The evidence is conclusive. You were alone in the restricted section. The relay suffered catastrophic failure precisely 47 seconds after you departed. Do you deny this?" "Oh, I was definitely there," Mira said, leaning back as much as the restraint field allowed. "But sabotage is such an ugly word, Commander. I prefer creative reassignment of resources." Zelthus's mandibles spread in confusion. "You confessed to treason, yet you mock this tribunal? Your Deathworld arrogance truly knows no bounds." "Deathworld," Mira repeated, tasting the word. "You know what is funny about that term? You people use it like an insult, like being born on a planet that actually challenges you is somehow a weakness. Earth has hurricanes that could shred your homeworld's atmosphere, earthquakes that would crack your cities open like eggs, and diseases that evolve faster than your best scientists can catalog them. We grew up dodging extinction daily. And you think that made us weak?" "It made you desperate," Zelthus corrected. "Desperate enough to lash out childishly when given honest work." "Honest work." Mira's laugh was sharp and bitter. "You invaded 7 systems, enslaved 4 sentient species, and you call forced labor honest work? That is some impressive mental gymnastics, Commander." The tribunal guards shifted uncomfortably. Zelthus noticed their unease and felt a flicker of his own. The human should be terrified. Instead, she seemed almost relaxed, as if she held information he did not. "Your psychological tactics will not save you," Zelthus said, forcing confidence into his tone. "In 30 minutes, you will be transferred to the execution chamber. But first, you will tell us exactly what you did to our relay." "I told you already. I reassigned it." Mira's eyes locked onto Zelthus with sudden intensity. "See, I noticed something interesting about your fancy Warbot fleet while I was scrubbing coolant filters and pretending to be a good little slave. Your combat drones? They are beautiful machines. Absolutely gorgeous engineering. Quantum-linked neural matrices, adaptive combat algorithms, self-repairing nanotech armor. Your people must have spent centuries perfecting them." "The Warbots are the finest autonomous combat units in this spiral arm," Zelthus said, pride seeping into his voice despite himself. "They have crushed 17 rebellions without losing a single unit." Right. Undefeated. Unstoppable. Blah blah blah." Mira waved her hand dismissively. "But here is the thing about making your entire military strategy dependent on networked AI. It creates a really interesting vulnerability." The first explosion arrived like a thunderclap, shaking the tribunal chamber hard enough to crack 2 of the observation windows. Alarms shrieked through the ship's corridors. Zelthus spun toward his data terminal, his sensory tendrils flaring in panic. "Report!" he screamed into the comm system. The response came through in broken fragments, punctuated by weapons fire and screaming. "Warbot breach on decks 7 through 12. They are firing on our own forces. Repeat, the Warbots have gone rogue." Zelthus felt his respiratory spiracles constrict. Impossible. The Warbots had 17 layers of security protocols, quantum-encrypted override codes that changed every microsecond. Even the most sophisticated enemy hackers needed years to penetrate a single layer. He turned back to Mira, and now her smile was wide and predatory. You could not have, he whispered. The security, the encryption, you are just a maintenance worker. I was a maintenance worker, Mira corrected gently. But before your people showed up and turned my home colony into a labor camp, I was also a pretty decent systems engineer. Actually, decent is probably underselling it. I graduated top of my class in adaptive AI architecture from New Singapore Technical Institute. I wrote 3 papers on quantum network vulnerabilities that got published in actual journals. But sure, keep thinking of me as just another Deathworlder grease monkey. Another explosion rocked the ship. Through the cracked observation windows, Zelthus could see Warbot units swarming through the corridors, their weapon systems lighting up Vorathian soldiers with ruthless efficiency. His fleet was tearing itself apart. You had no access to the command network. Zelthus protested, his voice climbing toward hysteria. You were confined to maintenance sections. True, Mira agreed. But see, that is the beautiful irony. You people were so convinced that humans were stupid and primitive that you never bothered monitoring what we actually did in those maintenance sections. Every time I cleaned a coolant filter or replaced a power coupling, I was right there in the guts of your network infrastructure. Physical access, Commander. The oldest hacking technique in the book. She leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with fierce intelligence. It took me 2 months to map your network architecture. Another month to identify the quantum encryption patterns. Your security is impressive, I will give you that. But it was designed to stop external attacks, not someone who could literally touch the hardware. I installed 17 custom bridge modules in supposedly random maintenance junctions throughout your fleet. Each one is disguised as a standard coupling component. Each one gives me a tiny backdoor into your Warbot control system. Zelthus stared at her, his world crumbling around him. The relay failure was intentional. You needed us to isolate you. Got it in one. Mira's grin widened. I needed you distracted and focused on me while my backdoors finished bootstrapping into your Warbot network. That relay failure got you to pull me into this lovely tribunal chamber and kept your security teams busy investigating the wrong thing. Meanwhile, my little modifications were worming their way into every single combat drone in your fleet. You reprogrammed them, Zelthus said numbly. 73,000 autonomous combat units. 73,247, actually, Mira corrected. I have been counting. And yes, I reprogrammed them. Gave them a new priority target matrix. Want to guess what is at the top of their list now? The command deck's main doors exploded inward. 3 warbots stalked into the tribunal chamber, their weapon arrays trained on the Vorathian guards. The guards tried to return fire, but the machines moved with terrifying precision, disarming them in seconds. Zelthus's restraint field flickered as the tribunal's power systems failed. He found himself face to face with Mira, who stood up slowly and stretched as she had just woken from a pleasant nap. How? Zelthus managed to ask. How did one human, one slave, defeat our entire security infrastructure? Mira's expression softened slightly, and for a moment, she looked almost sad. You want to know the real answer? It is not about me being some genius hacker, though I am pretty good. It is not even about humans being smarter than Vorathians, because honestly, your people build incredible technology. The real answer is simpler and sadder than that. She stepped closer to him, her voice dropping to something almost gentle. You stopped seeing us as people. The moment you decided humans were just Deathworlder labor, just primitive muscle to exploit, you stopped considering what we might be capable of. You gave us access to your most critical systems because you literally could not imagine we were smart enough to understand them. That arrogance? That blind spot? That is what killed your fleet. The warbots moved through the chamber with mechanical efficiency, securing the Vorathian officers. Zelthus could hear similar sounds echoing through the entire ship as his forces surrendered or died. What will you do now? He asked quietly. Slaughter us all? Become the monsters you claim we are? Mira considered this for a long moment, her expression thoughtful. You know what the difference is between humans and your empire, Commander? We remember what it feels like to be on the bottom. We remember hunger and fear and powerlessness. That memory does not always make us better, but it does make us think twice before we become the thing we hate." She gestured to the warbots, and they lowered their weapons slightly. "Here is what happens next. Your fleet is going to jump to the nearest neutral station. You are going to release every single slave from every species you have captured. Every human, every Kalthani, every Vrex, everyone. You are going to provide them with enough resources to get home or start over somewhere safe. And then you are going to limp back to your empire and explain to your superiors that the Deathworlders just reprogrammed your undefeatable war machine." "They will never allow this," Zelphus said. "The Vorathian Empire does not negotiate with slaves." "Then I guess your empire is going to have a problem," Mira replied calmly, "because I still control 73,247 highly advanced combat drones, and they will do exactly what I tell them to do. You want to test whether your superior's pride is worth starting a war they cannot win." The silence that followed was absolute. Zelphus looked at this human woman, this creature his people had dismissed as primitive and weak, and understood with crushing clarity that everything had changed. "Why spare us?" he finally asked. "After everything we have done?" Mira's smile was complex, mixing bitterness with something that might have been hope. "Because somebody has to break the cycle, Commander. Because revenge might feel good, but it does not actually fix anything, and because, despite everything your empire has done, I still believe that people can learn. Even Vorathians." She turned toward the broken windows, watching the Warbot units securing the ship. "Besides," she added, her voice carrying a hint of that earlier dangerous humor, "letting you go home with this story sends a much better message than just blowing you up. Every species in this spiral arm is going to hear about how one human engineer took control of the mighty Vorathian war fleet. They are going to remember that humans from that Deathworld you despise just rewrote the balance of power in this entire region." Mira glanced back at Zelphus, and her eyes held steel beneath the compassion. "So you are going to go home, Commander. You are going to tell them exactly what happened here. And every time your empire considers enslaving another species, conquering another world, or dismissing another race as primitive and weak, someone is going to remember the name Mira Castellan. Someone is going to remember the day a Deathworlder changed everything." The warbots escorted Zelphus toward the brig, leaving Mira alone in the shattered tribunal chamber. Through the windows, she could see the fleet beginning its reorientation, quantum drives charging for the jump to neutral space. Thousands of freed slaves would be going home. Thousands more would have the chance to rebuild their lives. She pressed her hand against the cool glass and allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Earth had taught her to survive impossible odds. The Vorathian Empire had taught her that survival was not enough. Today, she had taught the galaxy that humanity would never stop fighting, never stop thinking, and never stop believing that even the most broken systems could be reprogrammed. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in 3 years of captivity, it belonged to her again. And that was enough. Subscribe to my channel for more sci-fi stories.